Hey there, everybody. This is Beyond the Beach, Career Conversations with graduates of Cal State Long Beach. I'm your host, Kenji Klein, Associate Professor of Management at the College of Business at California State University, Long Beach, where I teach business strategy, general management, and organization theory. In this show, I interview former students and recent graduates about life after Long Beach. Our conversations cover topics like how my guests chose a career path, how they landed their first job, and what it's been like to navigate the chaos, challenges, and opportunities of their early careers. My hope is that you will find their experiences useful and inspiring in helping you chart your path beyond the beach. My guest today is William Cruz. William was a student in my business strategy class back in 2016. William just arrived back from Japan, where he worked as a recruitment consultant at an executive recruitment firm. Hey, William, it's really great to have you here today.
Thanks for inviting me.
So let's just dive right in. I'm wondering if you could just briefly introduce yourself to the audience, a little bit about who you are, when you graduated, and what you studied.
Right.
And then I guess what you've been doing recently.
Okay. So I graduated in 2017 as an international business major. And for my focus, I had to choose a language. So I chose Japanese. That pushed me back to graduate a year late because I chose it in my junior year.
Okay.
And it was kind of unexpected.
Yeah.
But from that, I went off to Japan, originally teaching English through a government program. And over there, I did my first job change. I found a company that an alumni from the English teaching program started, and that was in an executive recruitment firm.
Right.
So there I handled the standard contingency recruitment and also retained executive search.
Okay. Cool. So let me ask you first, why Japan? Why did you pick that as your language?
You know, it did happen randomly.
Yeah.
So I was in my junior year here when I can't remember the name of the professor, but he was quite scary. He would make us sit in a circle, and he would just, it was all oral, no textbooks.
Dennis Laurie, Dr. Laurie?
Yes, Dr. Laurie. There we go. It was Dr. Laurie. Scariest, but
the infamous
best class I've taken.
Yeah. Okay. The infamous Dr. Laurie. Yeah.
He was talking about Japan, and he kept describing it as a sleeping giant,
right,
and how important Japan is to the U.S. and global economy. So it really got my interest, and I decided, well, I want to go over there because it looks like there's a growing need for business professionals, and if you can master the language, you can find some success. So the next semester, when I had to choose a language, instead of choosing Spanish, I changed to Japanese.
Okay. So you decided to go a little bit harder route.
A lot harder.
Yeah.
I
Japanese
actually couldn't even take Japanese here.
Yeah.
I had to go to night school at El Camino College. The university signed off on it.
Okay. So it was not the case like that you had played Pokemon all your life when you were a little kid or watched anime and you were like, I want to go to Japan. It was really like something in class that made you think, oh, that's interesting.
I mean, I did have interest in Japan, but it was just, when I was little, I played Final Fantasy, and that was about it.
Okay.
It wasn't a constant thing. I was never into anime or anything like that.
That's cool. And then I guess you'd mentioned that you taught English in a government program. So was that like the JET program?
Yeah, it was a JET program.
Okay. So the JET program is basically the Japanese Ministry of Education has a program where they bring native English speakers to Japan to work in Japan. And where were you placed? Because I know, you don't get to choose where you're going to go.
I really thought I did, and I wrote this big essay choosing where I wanted to be, and they ended up putting me in a place called Tottori.
Oh, okay.
One of the more rural.
It's very rural.
Prefectures of Japan.
So that's the place with the sand dunes?
Yeah, that's the sand dunes.
So it's on the the northwest kind of upper edge.
Yeah, from Osaka, it's like southwest.
Yeah.
It's about a 3-hour drive from Osaka.
Okay. And you did that for 2 years?
For 2 years, yeah.
Okay. And how was that? And that was your first job out of college?
That was my first job out of college.
And how was it?
A huge shock because it was outside of the direction I had studied for.
Mm-hmm. So
teaching, number one, that was already difficult. And then I was in a very rural area where the town I was in, their city lights would turn off at 11 p.m. and it was just pitch darkness. Wow. And growing up in Los Angeles, it's totally different. There's always sound and light here. So that took some getting used to. And then for the job, what was difficult is the school I was teaching at, the kids it was like the worst or the second worst performing high school.
Okay.
So those kids weren't going to university.
Okay.
Which means they had no interest in English either.
Right.
So that was a whole different mentality I had to take when teaching them English.
Yeah, got it. Interesting. So that job you found because it's an official program and you just put in an application for it. Is that correct?
It was actually through my AP Spanish teacher in high school.
Okay.
So he had gone on the program and I kept close to him. And I remembered he had lived in Japan. I didn't know about the program yet. So
Right.
I contacted him and he told me, oh, my partner's Japanese. I lived over there. I can write your letter of recommendation.
Okay.
They have two positions or two types. One as an English teacher and one as a like government employee where you work in the city hall.
Right.
You work for Department of Tourism, something like that.
Right.
So that's what I originally applied for. And in the interview, they told me, your Japanese isn't good enough for this position. You need close to fluent. So they said, but we like you. We'll give you a shot to come as a teacher. If you say yes to a teacher,
Right.
you'll be accepted. So I was like, okay, I'll do that.
All right. So when you got to Japan and you found out you were in this middle of nowhere, right? Small town in Japan, teaching kids who weren't super excited to be learning English. Mm-hmm. How did you feel and how did you kind of navigate that situation? And also a little bit about like, what was your mindset where you're like, okay, I'm just doing time here or, until I can find something else, or what was going on in your mind at that point?
I think for the mindset, I came in with this stereotypical millennial mindset where it's like, I want to make an impact.
Yeah.
So at first it was, I want to motivate these kids.
Right.
Until one of the teachers told me, like, no, you let me show you their families. Like, they're
right.
farmers. These kids, they don't have any interest in that.
Right.
So it turned into stop trying to study English for school and make English fun.
Okay.
Change their mentality on English being something tedious. So
right.
We did teach them the lessons, but like one of the things I did was for a lesson on a speech they have to give, I made it into a fashion show. So we got newspapers and these kids cut up their whole design and they had to present the design they made with runway music and everything. So it made it a lot of fun for them.
Right.
And they were excited about it.
Right.
It was good.
Okay, good. So that was the mindset thing. And then how did you make that adjustment? What did you learn from those 2 years?
I think the best thing I learned was just intercultural communication.
Right.
Because Japanese people are very, very indirect when they're going to correct you in something.
Right.
Or anything they want to change. So being American, if I don't hear it directly, I just think, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So I have to step back and think a lot more about what they're actually telling me.
Right.
So it was good to learn that, to learn a different way of thinking and understand that there's rules and traditions.
Right.
I can't slam my way through them.
Right. Especially, I think, in small town.
Oh, yeah.
In Japan. Yeah. I mean, so it's different. So it's interesting. I lived in Tokyo for quite some time, I think about 4 years. Mm-hmm. And then I also lived in Nagasaki for about almost 2 years. And Nagasaki is not a small town in the way that Totori is, like where you were. It's probably a really small town. It is a city, but it's a fairly isolated, smaller kind of city. 800, maybe it's like 800,000 overall in that entire area. So still a city, but not very in touch with like the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And it was different. It was definitely different. You had to be much more attuned to Japanese cultural norms because they just weren't as experienced with non-Japanese. Whereas in Tokyo, they're kind of like, these foreigners, just whatever, damn foreigners are just going to do their own foreign thing. And then they kind of like, they're used to having to deal with that. But I think in the smaller towns.
And you milk it a bit too.
And you milk it for sure. Absolutely. Definitely. Yes, I will say the expectations on Japanese people socially can be kind of intense, right? Yeah. And so to be able to say, hey, everybody, I'm not Japanese, and so I don't have to follow that particular rule is kind of a very nice convenience.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword, right?
Right.
There were times when I wanted to
Yeah.
blend in, and then they were just like, no, this is just too hard of a concept for you.
Right.
Just accept that we're giving you a pass.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how did your language skills progress, given that you were in a small town?
Yeah. At the beginning, it was probably the first 6 months. It was so difficult because there weren't many English speakers.
Okay.
And then even going to the supermarket, that was hard because it was a bunch of ingredients I didn't recognize.
Right.
So I thought my Japanese was good enough when I got there.
Yeah.
And as soon as I opened up a menu, I couldn't understand what I was reading.
Right. Right.
It was, the names are just so unique from what we studied in school.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I dated my first Japanese girlfriend that my Japanese really skyrocketed. So that's probably the best advice I could give anyone. Yeah, use the textbooks, but date. That's gonna help
Date a
you
Japanese
right away.
person. Yeah, I don't know if that's the most politically correct advice, but I have to say for me as well, that was like when my Japanese just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
It made a huge difference. The difficulty was that from that though was what I did eventually learn. Like when I moved to Nagasaki and I had all these I was going to a boxing gym, so I made all these Japanese male friends, and they were just like, "You talk like a girl," right?
Oh, yeah, that's still my problem.
Right.
They laugh at me so much for doing that.
Yeah, because there's a different language that men and women use in Japan.
Yeah.
And so if you're interacting only with people, from the opposite sex, for example, then you end up having a problem along that front.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So so then you did that for 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me, how did you make the transition from doing that into doing the stuff with the recruiting firm? How'd you get into recruiting?
So what happened was I was really tired of it. I already knew it was going to be a short-term thing.
And what year was this, by the way?
This was in 2019.
Okay.
It was in 2018 when we get the recontracting slips.
Okay.
And I already knew I didn't want to stay.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, what's kind of soon, because the contract ends in the summer and I have to sign this in November. I don't know what's going to happen. I was feeling a little bit.
Right.
In November, I was feeling like I'm not ready to leave yet.
Right.
But signed it, and there was a job fair that the government organizes for people on the JET program, and that was in February. So I went, and there was huge companies there: Sony, Nintendo, a lot of Japanese manufacturing companies, and a lot of recruitment firms as well. They love taking non-Japanese people in.
Right.
So I went to that. I did a few interviews, and
so the JET program specifically has a recruitment fair for companies to hire people who had been teaching English
or who were working
in the government positions, and get them jobs doing something other than teaching English in Japan.
Yeah, they do that. So it helps out a lot because it was pretty good company.
Yeah.
So when you look around.
Because they did not. So I have a lot of friends who did the JET program. Now this is way, way, way back.
Yeah.
And they did not have that.
Oh, really?
As back then, as far as I know, none of the people that I knew who had been interested in finding jobs outside of English teaching in Japan transitioned to anything else through a government program. So this might be something new that they've done. That's cool.
I mean, during COVID, they didn't do it again, but I don't know if they brought it back.
Right.
But it helped out a lot.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I did get 2 offers, but one of them was out with a manufacturing company. It was in the middle of nowhere again. I was like, no, I want to go back to the city. I can't take this.
Yeah. Okay. So you went to the fair, and 2 companies tapped you on the shoulder.
Well, it was in total. It was 4.
Okay.
But there was only 2 that I was considering seriously.
I see. Okay. And then what happened? Did you take one of them, or you didn't? Okay. So then one of them was the one you took.
Yeah.
And that one was?
That was with a executive search firm.
Okay.
So with them, the 2 directors were they were alumni from the JET program, and there was a few people from the JET program that they had hired the previous 2 years. So it looked nice. It looked like a good transition spot. They had really good training set up.
Okay.
It was central Tokyo, and they also gave me the rest of the summer off to come back to Los Angeles, spend time with my family before starting the job.
Okay. Great. And at that point, had you given much thought to being in recruiting?
No, I didn't. I wasn't really interested in it because the only thing I knew about recruiting at that point was we'd watch those like competition shows on TV, like Hell's Kitchen, all that. There was always people competing that their job title was recruiter.
Okay.
So that's all I knew about it at the time. But as I went through the interviews and I saw what you get to do in the job, who you get to interact with. I was like, okay, this is a very good gateway into like Tokyo business culture and networking.
Right.
Like, this is a good starting point.
Okay. And when you say that, what was it about it that looked like it would be interesting and good?
So for us being an executive search, we were dealing with Japan country managers, CFOs,
Okay.
CTOs. It was all executive level,
Right.
and APAC and HQ executives as well. So that was really good to see. And it's all it's all the top movements they're going to be making.
Okay.
And strategies.
And these are all Japanese people?
No, so it was mixed.
Okay.
It was mixed because a lot of the companies, they were headquartered out of Europe or the Americas.
Okay.
So sometimes they would send expats over to lead the Japan operation for 5 years or so.
Okay. Interesting. And so you were just excited about the possibility of interacting with these people, seeing what they're doing, understanding what executive level people are doing in companies in Japan.
Yeah, just getting a lot more connections and understanding what business in Tokyo is like.
Okay.
And of course, it's you can make a lot of money quickly in recruitment as well. So thinking about my student loans and everything, I was like, okay, this is a good way to help pay those things off.
I see. It's commission-based? Is that what it is?
It's commission-based, yeah.
I see. Okay.
In recruitment in Japan has the highest fees.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
So it's also, that's a big benefit of it.
So it can be pretty lucrative.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right. So then, so you took the summer off. You came back here. You went to Japan. This is
2019.
2019.
Yeah, it was August of 2019 when I got back for a September start date.
Okay. So tell me about that first job then, that first like actual business job instead of English teaching job.
Oh, it was incredibly difficult getting started because it was a small, medium-sized company. So if you really want to get business going, you got to put the hours in. So it was a lot of cold calling. The official hours were 9 to 6 p.m.
Okay.
But if you really want to get your business going, you have to stay late. So there was days, or it was more than days. It was weeks when I'd stay until like 9 p.m.
Wow.
Just calling, sending emails, getting stuff ready for the next day. And the other thing is because people in Japan, they don't like to answer the phone during working hours, especially if it's a recruiter calling.
Right.
They get scared that it's not a conversation they can have. So a lot of people would call back or they'd want to talk after 6:30, 7 p.m.
Well, okay, so let me ask you a question. I don't know if it's still like this in Japan, but this hesitancy to talk on the phone with a recruiter. So when I worked at Mitsubishi Heavy Industries for a couple of years in Nagasaki, right? And so we had the layout in our office was like 10 desks lined up face to face, all right next to each other. Mm-hmm. We had like a phone kind of in the middle of any four desks. And when the phone rang, somebody had to pick it up. So it's like I'm sitting directly across from a coworker. Directly to the right is another coworker. Directly to the left is another coworker. And catty corner on both sides is a coworker. Yeah. That's the environment that I worked in. Is it still kind of like that in Japan or no?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So that was something that I remember I would see in the office across from us. Okay. I'd look out the window and I'd see them like that. Yeah. Our office wasn't like that. And then you go to more companies that are from Europe or the U.S. and they've started to transition from that as well. Okay. But you still
because the reason I say that is like I would not want to pick up a phone from a recruiter in that kind of situation because it'd be impossible, right? They know exactly what's going on.
With the Japanese companies, I think it still is much more prevalent. And they would get mad. I remember there was one man I called and he told me, it's business hours. Don't call me again. Yeah. I was angry.
And so where'd you get your leads from?
So we had our database, and the easiest thing to do was reactivate people that are clients that were on there. And if it wasn't that, I'd get my leads from either going to networking events, a lot of the chambers of commerce events, and then an unconventional thing I did was when I'd go to an office building for a meeting, I'd see on the directory all the companies, and I'd just go hitting each one of them up, and sometimes people were so shocked they just let me go speak to the person.
So you would like knock on, like literally knock on
an office building. Sometimes I would do that.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So that requires a really outward kind of personality, and it's basically a sales job, right?
Yeah, it was. That was the sales aspect of it. Yeah. I think that was the easier part, honestly.
Okay.
Because it was easy to just go start building a relationship with people, doing the work for the project that they wanted to take on with you. That was a heavy lifting.
What does that mean, doing the work for the project?
So
I'm unfamiliar with recruiting as a line of work.
Okay.
And I'm imagining our listeners are also, so maybe some of them are considering it.
Okay.
Especially when you said the commissions are high.
Yeah. So it was always for hiring needs they would have, either now or in the future. Let's say, for example, it was a client that just came over from Germany.
Okay.
They want to shake things up. They're here. They want to show how they can fix things going on.
So a client who just came from Germany means a German company?
German company who just sent over new country manager.
Okay.
They want to show the skill, how they can change things up.
Got it.
So they say, I want to get rid of, or I want to change our sales manager.
Okay.
They're giving us 2% increase on our sales. I want it 5%.
Right.
So I need to look for somebody like this, and they start saying what's going on. For us, since we're a boutique firm, we can have more time to figure out exactly why. And what made it really interesting for me was finding the pain points. Why 5%? What's the reason for it? And then things would come up. Well, we're launching this product in these next years, and I want to have a good foundation set, or these things. Okay. Or is it because your head's on the platter if you don't return? All those things helped us understand, what do I need to get for you?
Got it.
I don't want to just send you a resume.
Yeah.
And then you say, oh no, it doesn't look good. I want to understand what's going to make you interested in it.
Got it.
And more importantly, it's what we were taught was you should be able to get them to say yes to interviewing that person without even showing them the resume.
Right.
You should be able to sell it because you know what they need, not what they want.
Right. I see. So that's an interesting job then, because you're kind of doing two things at once, right? You're facing two different sides. So on the one hand, you got these clients that are coming over who want a specific thing. So you really got to get inside their head and their business to figure out what it is that they want. And at the same time, you're facing the other way, trying to find potential people.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing you're trying to build a portfolio of people, and then matching what the client is wanting with the people that you know about, and seeing if you could kind of connect them.
Yeah, and what was difficult about it was when you're doing business development, your focus always changes from one side to the other, because sometimes I'd find somebody that was just amazing.
Yeah.
And at that point, when I pay attention to everything, what they need, what they want, I'm like, oh, I know about 10 companies that would love you.
Right.
And my focus is now, I'm going to get you a job.
Got it.
I'm not going to listen to these companies saying we need people.
Right.
You're the one that's going to.
I see. So
it always changes.
So you would switch your own focus.
Yeah.
Like if you had somebody that you thought, oh, this person is really good, I want to play, you'd focus on that person. But sometimes it'd be like, I'm in a different mode now. This client is really interesting. What they want is interesting to me, so I'm going to see if I can find someone for them.
You have to listen which is more important, because it's so easy to get caught up on the high commission, or the easy job specs,
right?
Or it could just be as simple as, I just like you, so I want to help you.
Right. So that personal relationship.
Yeah. All of that gets in the way. Sometimes you have to step out and see, where am I actually going to make money?
Okay. Interesting. Now, you said you started in September of 2019, and about 6 months after that, something kind of interesting happened, right? So tell me about that. How did that affect what you were doing? Anything? And in any way at all?
Oh, 100%. So life was great when I started. It was everything you see about Tokyo and the business culture, but when COVID hit, everything shut down. So it came as a whiplash effect from US and Europe. They started shutting things down, and Japan had to as well, even though we weren't officially on lockdown. It was just recommended that you stay home, and we were given stipends, and businesses were given stipends. But so it just slowed down business. We went to work from home, which for me was great. It caused my most successful quarter.
Okay.
So it was good. I locked in, and I was working with a lot of companies, and I switched my focus from a lot of manufacturing companies to asset management.
Okay.
Like securities.
Right.
Because they were hiring a lot. They had a lot of need. There was still a lot of development coming into Japan. And I was lucky enough to be able to catch a whiff of it and then dig deep into it.
Okay. Interesting. So it actually made things easier for you in terms of the workplace.
Well, I don't know if
Well,
easier, but it brought me a lot of success.
Okay.
The hard part was consistency. With that. During COVID, it gets hard.
Yeah. How far out of central Tokyo were you living?
I wasn't even far. I lived in Ikebukuro.
Oh, Ikebukuro.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
I lived
Okay.
walking distance from that station.
Oh, okay.
So I purposely wanted to be in the center.
Yeah,
after being in rural Japan, I was like, never again.
So I used to live in Mejido, which is like one stop away from
it was one stop.
Ikebukuro, and it's basically a 10-minute walk
Yeah.
to Ikebukuro. I used to go there all the time.
Yeah, Mejido was really nice because it's much more residential.
Yeah, it's a cool neighborhood. And Ikebukuro is fun to be able to just walk to in the middle, you know. You don't have to worry about catching a cab after you've been out drinking.
Yeah. I didn't want to admit it, but that's pretty much the main reason why I wanted to stay there.
Yeah, I know. I get it.
Yeah. But also to the office, I liked going to the office even during COVID.
Yeah.
I would go about 3 times a week off my own desire, and
Right.
it would be about a 30-minute train ride.
Okay.
So it wasn't too bad.
Oh, okay. That's cool. So how long were things really locked down in Japan?
About maybe a year. For business, like for my line of business, everything just switched to Zoom, and I didn't really want to go back from that for a while.
Right.
But for daily life,
Yeah.
restaurants and everything, you could tell they got tired of it, and they decided to open up and pay the fines because they still made more money.
Right.
People wanted to go out, drink, and eat everything. So
Well, and one of the benefits of living in Tokyo is eating the food. That you
yeah.
The food there is really, really great. Not just the Japanese food, but like all the different kind of food.
It is.
Yeah. So tell me about challenges work-wise, right? Aside from, so some of it is you're obviously it's hard hours. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of work that you had to do. People weren't always receptive to recruiting. Yeah. Any other kinds of challenges? And were there any challenges with like just the nature of the business culture or in the company itself that you were working in?
The main challenge for this industry is that you're dealing with people. So when you're getting somebody a job, it's not like you're making a sale for from a company to another company.
Right.
Because you have to consider that and if this person's married, you're affecting the livelihood of this person and their family. So a lot of times people would let their emotions take over. So you're thinking logically.
Right.
Like if this is just a contract and a sale, and then you forget that they're scared because there's so much uncertainty here.
Right.
You mess up on a deal, and you might be messing up someone's life.
Oh, so stakes are high.
Yeah. And then if their company doesn't want to let them go, how there might be manipulation going on, and they offer more money and all these things. So that part is very difficult.
Right.
Just because people would get hysterical sometimes. So it's hard that you have to control that, or people would use you as like a like as a therapist, and they're upset with their job. All of a sudden, they get mad at their boss, and they're like, "Let me go talk to a recruiter." And
Right. I see.
Yeah. You get these like
they're thinking of basically it's a rage quit for them.
Yeah, and it's like these sweet nothings whispered into your ear, but they vented it out, and they're like, "Yeah, never mind. I don't want to quit after all."
Got it.
So that happens a lot. For my company, since we were small, you have to do everything yourself. So we call it we do like 360 recruiting, which means you're developing the business, you're making the sale, the contract, and you're also doing the search and arranging the interviews. You're dealing with both the client and the job seeker. So it's a lot of work on your part.
Right.
And the successes feel great because you're like, yeah, I did that.
Right.
But when the losses happen, you put so much time and effort there that you're like, let's restart this again from number one.
Right.
And you have to balance out different projects that are at different phases.
Right.
So that's a really hard thing that, to be honest, I was not too good at. I could only balance like 3 projects at a time. And our directors would always say, like, you want to have 5 going.
Right.
But it's hard. It gets really, really chaotic.
I see. And you need to have a bunch going and at different stages?
At different stages. And sometimes they fall apart.
Yeah.
And it was out of your control. And it just sucks to see that money slip through your fingers.
Yeah, right.
And then, they say, well, start again. And you're like, I want to be sad about it a little bit. Let me
right. Let me mourn that loss for a little bit.
Yeah.
Before you're like back in the trenches.
Yeah.
So let's see. So whereas in a bigger firm, it sounds like what you're saying is in a bigger firm, it's more specialized. So they're just doing the recruiting part of the employees or potential employees, or they're just interfacing with clients.
Yeah, they have a little bit more of a structure where there's a person. Most recruitment firms that are big, you start as just cold calling, like you're just calling.
Right.
You're sending it off to your manager, whoever's good.
Right.
Manager hands it, and they send it off to the person who's dealing with the client.
I see. Okay.
Of course, the trade-off is lower commissions.
Yeah. Right. Got it. Okay. And then you had mentioned that sometimes clients this is so emotional for them that they get hysterical.
Oh no, it's the job seekers.
Oh, the job seekers get hysterical.
Which is it's completely understandable.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. I was using the wrong language.
Oh, it's okay.
But so can you give me an example of what hysterical looks like in that type of situation? And do you think it's more intense because the work culture in Japan is different? Like in the U.S., would you expect to have the same type of responses?
I do think so.
Okay.
I think so. I think it's just a natural reaction to a life change.
Okay.
One of the ones that really, and I ended up losing it, so that really hit me was I was helping someone that was a senior manager at the Big Four, one of the Big Four, and I had gotten him a really good deal. It was an upgrade in every sense. This person was stuck in that position. They were promised partner, and it had been 5 years, and people kept leaving below them. So they were just handling the work that couldn't be done by anyone else. I told them, like, they're gonna keep doing that to you.
Right.
They tell you that. So got him a really good job. Salary was an increase. Title was an increase. There was more international communication with headquarters. But when it came to signing the offer letter, the wife said, "Yeah, but this is much more stable. Look, it's in consulting. This is in manufacturing. Consulting's always going to be around."
Right.
So that got to him a little bit. And then it was also that the partners, when this person told the partners that they're going to leave, the partners took them out for a nice steak dinner and some drinks. And there, 4 partners in that dinner started telling him, "Well, we were trying to set you up to be partner. We're going to put you on development path, this, and that." And it got to this person, the influence from the partners. And they called me the next week and said, "Yeah, I'm not going to take it after all because they're going to do this." And I really tried saying, like, why do you have to threaten to leave for them to do this, right? If it was really a healthy environment, you'd already be on that path and you'd see it. Right. Does HR know that they put you on that path? Right. HR would know. I put all these questions, and slowly this person, they'd stay quiet, and slowly they would just disappear. I see. More and more until, which is a very Japanese thing. Right. Confrontation. Yes. Until they just completely cut me off, and I went back to the client and I said, "There's nothing more I can do. Right. I'm going to pass it off to you, and you guys have the last chance to retain this person or not." Right. And didn't go through. Interesting. I'm really curious, like, what actually happened. If he actually did get partner, or once they got him to step away from that, they just yanked it away from him again. Well, from what I know, he didn't get a promotion or anything. They just said, "We want to do that." But the other thing is, Japan's like LinkedIn is not very active. So so you don't know. And people disappear. Yeah. People they talk to the recruiters, and once they don't really need them anymore. Right. They just disappear. Yeah. I will say, when as the social media world evolved and, you started seeing like behaviors like ghosting and stuff, I remember thinking to myself, oh, this is just so Japanese. It's like Americans are developing this very Japanese habit. The difference is Japanese people are so good at reading between the lines and hiding it. Yes. In between the lines so well. Yeah. It's an art. It was one of the more complicated things about living in Japan. The thing with the expectations, I will say, so the upside, of course, is of dating, right? In Japan is your language skills get really good. The downside is it can be very, very difficult to navigate a relationship with someone from a culture where so much is left unsaid. Yeah.
when you're used to having to have sort of explicit conversations about stuff to know what's going on.
Oh yeah, that was the biggest struggle.
Yeah.
Aside from, you do grow the most in your language skills when you argue with the person you're dating. But for me, most of the time, that's when they were tired of English and like, oh no, we're arguing. It's in Japanese.
It's in
and
Japanese.
I just sit there like, I understand nothing.
I know. I have no idea what's going on. I know. And then cultural differences can be so strong. I remember having this one argument with a girlfriend at the time, and she was like, I feel like I'm arguing with America instead of just a person because my ideas were just so non-Japanese. It was really funny.
I'll give you a good one. I had an ex-girlfriend who learned English from this Star Wars English dictionary.
Okay.
And we were arguing, and she was so upset. And she was winning the argument, I'll admit that, but she told me when she was angry.
Wait, so you guys are having an argument in English?
In English.
And she was beating you?
She was beating me, yeah. She was much more logical than I was, so she was beating me. And in her anger, she yells at me, your effort is futile. I just was like, what? Who says that? She's like, I learned it in the Darth Vader says. I was like, oh, you're right. It's just, I lost.
That's too funny. Not only you're bested, but then you got Star Wars quoted at you. That's too funny. Okay, so anyway, how about, was there any challenge in like the internal politics of the company that you're in, or was that pretty much like easy to manage?
So for our company, I think it was about 2021, 2022 is when we transitioned from focusing on contingency searches, which those are the standard ones where a company would tell you what they're looking for. They open it up to however many recruiters they want and say, well, whoever gets it in gets the money.
I see. Okay.
We switched from that style to a retained search where it's one firm and then it's payment in installments. So from right at the start of the search, the company has to pay one of the first fees.
I see.
Yeah, they dedicate more to it. It's much more stable.
Right.
So we switched to that, and it was also because companies were demanding a lot more. So
Got
we
it.
thought it was a much better value, and we could really put in our resources for it.
Right.
So that transition was pretty tough for us because, like I said, we were a small firm, and we had to do everything ourselves. We had to learn to do the job in a very different way.
Yeah.
So we had to set up SOPs, and everybody
being
standard
operating procedures, right? Okay, just to make sure.
It's okay. So we had to set that up, and everyone from the directors down to our research team was new at it. So nobody could answer or could give guidance.
I see.
We just kind of had to maneuver it ourselves. I was lucky to be the first to get a project on that was also completed within a quarter, which is the ideal timeline you want. If not, it starts costing more than the sale.
Got it. Right.
So everything I set up, it was nice, and it seemed to work, but it was so hard to replicate it. It was 10 times more exhausting to work this way than the way we were used to.
Okay. But you had to do this because because of the nature of the clients and the work that the clients were demanding?
We wanted to switch this way.
I see.
So the directors wanted to.
Right.
And I did see the value in it.
Right.
But for me, what I thought we should do is we need to start setting up teams. We need, like how the bigger companies do have the function or the different stages set up of the search. We need people that are just handling on sourcing, people that are dealing with the client, because it's too much work for one person to do, and then to have 3 of these going on at the same time by one consultant, it's overwhelming.
I see. Right. But the rest of the company didn't see it that way, or they didn't?
No, it's not that they didn't see it. It was just we were in a really tough spot where you have to keep going until we can start doing that.
I see. So just the workload was too heavy.
Yeah, the workload was too heavy. It's just part of the transition.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, that's a really tough problem, right? There's that people face in so many different situations, right? It's just like there's stuff that's important, but then there's stuff that's urgent, and it's really hard to work on the important stuff because the urgent stuff is so demanding.
Yeah.
And so these other things get put off. And even if I could just do these things, it would make my life so much easier.
Yeah.
But you just don't have enough bandwidth to get to that spot.
The good thing about it, though, was because we switched to that model, we completely switched focus from working with clients that were in Japan already.
Right.
So now we were speaking to the APAC directors, to the HQ CEO or CFO.
Okay. And could you explain what those acronyms are? So.
Oh yeah, Asia Pacific, APAC. I don't know what the last two are.
Okay. But it's basically
it's the region.
right, companies in countries that are in the Asia region.
Well, it was their offices, so most of them were still headquartered out of Europe and the Americas.
Right.
But it was their region
Okay.
office, so they would control. Usually, it was Korea, Japan,
Right.
Taiwan, and sometimes like Australia and New Zealand.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, Southeast Asia as well. But China was always they had
Its
their
own
own
thing.
Yeah, it was just too different.
Yeah. And too big.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it was good because we got to speak with them, and for me being from LA, I leaned in a lot towards going to companies that were here, and especially in Silicon Beach. I went over and I started contacting a lot of them. We were able to get some projects started with companies that wanted to enter Japan, and
I see.
that's when we really took a consulting approach.
Got it.
And we did research on what the Japan market's like,
Right.
what the English level's like, average salaries, motivations for people to change jobs, just to bring transparency to them, because they would come in with this image or this mindset of like, we need to make quick sales,
Right.
quick revenue.
Right.
And in Japan, that's really hard.
Yeah.
So you start telling a Japanese director to do that,
Yeah.
and they're going to be pushing back, saying like, well, hold
Right.
on, we want to keep our relationships.
Right.
And usually the director is let go
Yeah.
because of that, but then the company only lasts maybe 5 more
Right.
years and they pull out of the country.
Right. They let the director go because they think the director is the problem, and they just don't understand. It's like, no, it's the country is just different, and you have to behave differently.
And you have to come in with a different mindset.
So what you were talking about, then what your company started doing was trying to create some educational material for these companies in the U.S., for example, who are thinking about going to Japan, saying, if you're going to come here, you got to understand that this is the dynamic here.
It worked out really well.
Yeah.
We were able to, we started doing like webinars and podcasts with partners from like Deloitte, from JLL, from all these other companies. And with that data, we'd also make reports from it, and we'd share it when we do, like our sales pitches. But it wasn't really a sales pitch. It was just giving the information. And then slowly they'd tell us what they need, because they saw, well, these people know the market. So we trust them.
And so these were many times companies that they weren't in Japan yet, but they were just thinking of going there. And this is kind of like drumming up potential new business by saying, hey, if you're ever thinking about coming to Japan, this is what you need to know.
Yeah, it was a lot like that. Awesome. Or companies who were restructuring in Japan, because they had new leadership come in, and they're looking at the region.
Okay, so and you stayed at this same company for the entire time you were in Japan after you switched from teaching English? Yeah,
I was there for 4.5 years.
Okay, that's great. What made you decide to leave the company, leave Japan, come back to the U.S.?
For Japan, there was both personal and professional reasons. Personal, my relationship had ended, and I just kind of realized that was pretty much the only reason I was staying there.
Okay.
And that person I was dating told me, like, well, they knew I wasn't happy in my job either. I was really burned out. So they told me, okay, well, you want to get your MBA, look at the universities here. But I didn't want to get an MBA from a Japanese university.
Right.
And then with recruitment, a lot of people, you really have to commit to it. And I was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do it. And I was getting to the point where it's you either jump in or you get out. Right. You can't keep just treading water. So there was that. And then I wanted to come back and get my MBA here. Okay. I decided that for sure. Yeah. And I wanted to switch industries. The other thing is with a lot of people, what I saw in Japan is a lot of people stayed because they met somebody and they had a family there. So the partner wants to stay. And I was like, well, I'm either going to get on that same boat and be here upset that I'm here because of this reason. Right. Or I could just go now. Okay. So for a variety of reasons, everything. Yeah, there was a lot of reasons. Okay. But the main thing that really pulled me back was the MBA. Yeah. Okay. That's cool. And so now you're not in recruiting. No,
right?
no.
And we'll talk a little bit more about like what you want to do moving forward. But I want to kind of switch topics a little bit and then think about like back when you were a student, right? So now you've been out, you've done all these things, right? If you could go back in time and talk to yourself, like 2017 you, what advice would you give?
Uh, my advice is let go of that part-time job. I tried to pay for university on my own.
Okay.
And because I was working that part-time job, I didn't have time for internships. My grades, I think my grades could have been better.
Right.
But the main thing was the internships and the focus on my career. I was so focused on getting by at the moment.
Yeah.
I think it would have been better to take on a little bit more loans.
Right.
I mean, Long Beach is one of the, I think it's ranked the number one, best bang for your buck university. So it's worth it taking the loans and getting that practice in. And there was a lot of students when I was here that complained about that. They're like, I don't have time for these things because we're working. So I'd say it sounds scary. It's very uncertain, but take it. And do those internships.
Yeah, it's here's my opportunity to do a pitch for the Student Center for Professional Development and the other parts of the College of Business and the university that are working on job search, job development, internship. Those programs are really valuable.
Well, I was part of the mentorship program as well. I should have
you
mentioned
were?
that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
that was through SCPD, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, it was. I did both years, the junior one and the senior one.
Yep.
And both of my mentors, they told me that advice. Leave your job. And I was working at Disneyland at the time.
Oh, okay.
Disneyland is pretty demanding on the hours.
Yeah.
Especially when you're closing, it kind of
Yeah.
sucks because you're there late. But they told me, leave it, find something else, take your loans. And I was unnecessarily living in Long Beach. I had an apartment.
Right.
I could have stayed with my parents. There was so many things I could have done.
Right.
I was forcing independence.
Right.
I shouldn't have.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's hard to kind of go back and think about. Maybe
really
maybe you needed at the time to have the independence. But the thing about the part-time job and focusing on internships, I think that theme has come up over and over again. It's just obviously the classes and the schooling and that knowledge and the degree itself, are important, and you got to do that. But it's like if you focus exclusively on that, I think you really handicapping yourself a little bit in terms of what opportunities are going to come your way when you're ready to graduate. Yeah. And it's hard to see that, I think, because, K through 12 and then college, it's like you've been taught school, and it's really hard to shift the mindset and go, wait a minute, school's not permanent. There's an end point, and then there's a job world. Maybe I need to start thinking about that transition while I'm actually in the last couple of years of school.
I mean, what my job in Japan taught me was what is very important, but who gets you to a position where you can show what you know. Yeah. So a lot of times, a lot of my new business came through people that I knew. They liked how I worked.
Yep.
They connected me to a new client. And
right.
That's something that I should have taken advantage of when I was a student here.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's what internships do.
Yep.
They give you connections to business professionals.
Yeah, exactly.
And the mentorship program too.
Yep.
My mentors were people who were like in Boeing and in Honda.
Right.
So it was really good connections to have.
Yeah. I totally endorse that. I think it's really important. In terms of the school stuff, was there anything that you learned or did in school itself that was valuable, looking back?
Yeah, so there was, like I said, Dr. Laurie's class was really helpful because it took me out of the mindset of just study the textbook. He would make us read the Wall Street Journal and make our own conclusions of what we're seeing. So it was really interesting to analyze things that way. Yeah. And then when I
did you learn a lot from the sort of terror of his sort of demandingness also, or no?
I did. I wasn't because my main clients, I worked mostly with CFOs, and when I decided not to work with banking or any financial institution CFOs because they were very demanding like that.
Okay.
But it helped me not be so scared of them.
Right.
And so it did help a lot, especially when you're put under pressure. Somebody wants an answer.
Yeah.
And you might not have it, to just be honest.
Yeah.
It helped that.
Yeah.
But it was also my international accounting class helped a lot. I can't remember the professor name, but for one of our exams, I remember he gave us this like Swedish financial report.
Okay.
And he said, based on your accounting skill, you should be able to know what company it is, what product they're selling, and where they're headquartered.
Right.
And I could only figure out that it was a manufacturer of goods. Turned out that it was Jack Daniels.
Oh.
So people were that good, but when I saw it, I was
interesting.
like, really? Through the numbers, you could figure that out.
Through the numbers.
That's crazy.
Yeah, interesting.
And I always wanted to go back and understand it better, but it helped.
That's cool. That's interesting that you're going to pick an accounting class because you were an IB major, right?
I have to.
Yeah.
I have to pick.
But what I mean is that when you think about something that was valuable, you're going back and looking at accounting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. That's cool.
And I dealt with mainly finance professionals in my when I was doing recruitment.
Right.
So I dealt a lot more with CFOs and finance business partners. So I just learned to understand that.
So it ended up being important in terms of what you were doing.
Yeah. And they taught me a lot. So that's the other great thing. If you're honest about what you don't know,
right?
They're very nice. I had to work a search for a SPC accounting director.
Mm-hmm.
So SPC special purpose companies,
right?
And it was for a asset management company. I didn't know what SPC accounting was, exactly how they structured it.
Yeah.
And then in Japan, they had two structures: the TKGK structure and the TMK structure.
Okay.
I just didn't know anything, so I asked one of the directors of a company to explain it to me, and it was it was below the CFO. I can't remember this person's title, and they went through it explaining exactly why things are different, what to look for, and that helped me so much because when I was looking for people,
right,
I asked them these questions. I didn't have to 100% understand it,
right,
but I had to know what to hear,
right.
Be like, okay, you know what this is,
right? Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because I think. Especially, again, I think it's part of the culture of school where we are like terrified to have something wrong, and therefore we don't want to admit what we don't know. But really, it's just like, understanding what you don't know and admitting it is like, that's the first step of actually learning, right? And it's like, how to get in the mindset, like, it's okay not to know something. The important thing is like, okay, that's where I'm at. And now how do I get to the next step? Well, I need to learn something, and being okay with that. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a challenge that I face in the classroom, right? Because students are like, they don't want me to know that that they don't know something, and I'm like, it's like, if I don't know, you don't know it. I can't help you get to where you're at a point where you know it. Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, for anybody that wants to go into consulting or any type of audit work, it's better to lose that habit because you'll just make the problem a lot bigger. If you behave that way. Right.
That's true.
I learned that the hard way a few times.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Not admitting that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then we were 4 weeks into a search project, and then I admitted I don't know finally, and they're like, "You really wasted all our time. We gave you another invoice payment." Yeah. So.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So fess up early.
Yeah, fess up early, and you'll stop a problem from happening.
Yeah, for sure. That's really interesting. Okay, so next question I have for you is, I'm really curious. Let's see, how have you managed to balance, professional life with personal life and find some kind of work-life balance? Or do you think that doesn't exist?
I mean, that's what I struggled with in Japan towards the end.
Right.
A lot has to do with just how apartments are over there in general, especially in Tokyo. They're just high rises, and there's not a lot of sunlight that comes in.
Right.
But since I've been back, that's one thing I really want to focus on is getting that work-life balance. So I read a few books that helped out a lot, like the 5 a.m. Club and all those types of books.
Yeah.
And they do help. It's so much better to wake up in the morning and get things done and have like meditation hours and things like that. That helps a lot. The other thing is, I think it's understanding work smart, not hard.
Right.
And for the job I had, yes, you had to work hard.
Yeah.
But as the years went by, I realized where I had to put those resources in. So when I had a project that, I had my deadlines, I was like, okay, right now is the time where I work until 9, 10 p.m. I do all my calls, but I didn't have to do that every single time because it was just spinning a wheel.
Right.
I didn't need to.
So I get, but in the beginning, did you have enough understanding of what's going on to figure out when you could be 100% and when you could sort of cut back?
No, and the other thing is, since it's a new industry, you have to just
Right.
dive in and do it.
Right.
So it's not anything I would say from the beginning, just start analyzing it and say no, because you develop so many skills. Like cold calling is something that a lot of people are terrified to do, and you just have to do it.
Right.
And our directors, one thing I'm grateful for is they told me, we didn't care if you got the meeting or not.
Right.
It's just you need to get that confidence to
Yeah.
call.
Yeah.
And, if somebody says no, to push back, to do
Right.
all these things.
Right.
That's what we cared about.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like at bats in sports. It's, you just got to do it over and over again, and eventually your skills will get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was also like for work-life balance, I got into groups in Tokyo that were for like playing soccer.
Okay.
There needed to be exercise to burn off the
Right.
stress of the job.
Yeah.
Just because recruitment is so stressful that
Yeah.
you can't just go home and
Right.
just sit on it. It
Right.
just eats at you. So working out, that helped. And then having a good network of friends or family
Right.
that can help you on the weekends disconnect.
Yeah.
The other thing is with a lot of jobs that are like this, like consulting,
Yeah.
you're always like just on call.
Right.
So you need to learn to turn off the phone or not look at it. So
Okay.
that was something that I developed as well.
Right.
For work-life balance.
So you had to draw some
Yeah.
clear boundaries.
Yeah, you have to draw the boundaries. And it has to be yourself because it's your own business that you're doing. So,
Right.
that's the hard part.
And was that also kind of a thing where knowing when you could draw boundaries and when you couldn't draw the boundaries and how to draw them, was that something that it took some time to get enough understanding of what you were doing to figure out where and when to draw them?
Yeah, when I started, my manager, we would laugh at it so much because I was terrified of him. I was terrified that I would not draw any boundaries.
Okay.
And after a while, I just understood how he was, and
Right.
It was easier to just say, no, I'm not doing that. And he was like, okay. And that's all it took. He just needed me to tell him no, and he was like, all right. I should have listened to him all along. They were saying after the probation period, and they saw, okay, you're doing fine. They were looking for consistency now.
Oh, okay.
And I was still working at like 100%. So
Right.
like, oh, okay, so this is his standard level.
I see.
And I set the expectations really high for them and for myself.
Right.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Because you'll burn out eventually.
Yeah, you burn out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I would save my vacation days to come visit for Christmas. So
Right.
I'd go a whole year without taking any breaks.
Right.
It was just a very bad
Yeah.
balance I had.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder also if the sort of national work culture affects your thinking. I don't know again what it's like in Japan nowadays, but I mean, when I was living there, it was very much still in that era of karoshi, which is like work yourself to death in Japanese, right?
Yeah.
That mentality was still really strong. And I remember when I worked at Mitsubishi, a lot of the newer people, it's like they'd stay in the office until 9 o'clock. They'd have their work done, but because their boss was sitting around reading the newspaper, they were like, I can't go home until he folds that newspaper and leaves. So they're there all,
just sitting
all
there,
evening, just sitting there trying to find something to do.
Still happens.
Yeah.
I have Japanese friends who were still in that situation, but for most of the non-Japanese companies, they were much more relaxed about it.
Yeah.
Which is the good thing about having a non-Japanese country manager.
Yeah.
That tension would ease off.
Right.
For a lot of companies.
Right. Where the concern is performance as opposed to presentation or.
Where there's some industries that it's inevitable that it's going to happen.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's why I think like a lot of auditors have to stay late.
Right.
It was pretty well known in Japan that like KPMG was the main one that had people staying super, super late. Accenture, like people that work for stuff like that.
Right. But that's just because the mountain of work is so high that you just need to stay in just to not get piled under? Or
because the projects were, they were with like a company that's headquartered in the Netherlands, and then you can talk at 10 p.m. now. So
right.
You're
coordinating the clock.
No matter what.
Yeah. Got it. So now that you've been, you did the 2 years teaching English, you did this for 4.5 years, you realize there's things about it you don't want to do anymore, right? You're doing the MBA. I'm curious if you could sort of, do you have a sense now for what success means?
I mean, I think I have aspects of what I want for success,
right?
Which is the main thing is I want to be fully committed into what I'm doing.
Okay.
Because that's what was missing in Japan.
Okay.
I was I did enjoy parts of the job, but I didn't want to commit to it.
Okay, right.
So one thing is being able to commit, having passion on what it is. And then I still feel that I need to learn a lot more of like organizational culture.
Right.
Since I was in a small company, I
Right.
want to see with a bigger company how they have
I
things
see.
set up.
So the success then it's around learning more
Yeah.
about the work environment.
Yeah.
So just growing as a person who's doing work, but also finding something that
Yeah.
you're really into. Do you have a sense for what that's going to be, or how are you going to go about figuring it out?
When I was thinking about it, I was super into the video game industry over in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
It was really good seeing like Activision trying to come in, and I was trying to work with them, seeing the growth of esports over there. So I was like,
Right.
Video games looks really interesting. A lot of indie studios are starting to come up more and more, even over here in LA.
Right.
So I was like, I really like that. I like the aspect of storytelling that they bring.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really good. And I was thinking, okay, what if I can get into video games? And with this MBA, what if I can be a co-founder of a studio or be
Right.
some type of partner for that? That'd be really good.
Okay.
So that's what I'm looking at. That's kind of what I want to work towards.
Right. So that's kind of, I guess that's related to my question, which is what's next for you?
So that's the main reason of the MBA.
Right.
The other thing is I'm a little bit flexible in what's next for me because I actually don't have any working experience in the U.S. So
Oh, right.
I need to get my feet wet first.
Mm-hmm.
I want to tie in my Japanese experience
Right.
without having to be in a Japanese working environment.
Right.
So a lot of the opportunities I've been getting have been like that. And I thought, well, why am I going to work in an environment that I left?
Yeah.
I didn't come back so I could sit, in those desks, how they are all together. Yeah. I do want the American office experience or
Yeah.
company experience,
Yep.
but where I can use my Japanese.
Got it. Okay. And so MBA,
Yeah.
and then the MBA then becomes a platform for shifting into something
Yeah.
new, right? I mean, that's one of the nice things about the MBA is you can say, yeah, I did this before, but now I have an MBA. So you've got, in a sense, from the point of view of people hiring, they look at this and say, new thing, you're not tied down to what you did before, so we can expect you to be doing something completely different.
Yeah. That's exactly why I thought I needed it, just because the experience in Japan, I thought it's good, but it's not enough. If I stay in a company here and I become a manager, it might not still be enough. The MBA kind of elevates it.
Got it.
Much better.
Right. Have you applied yet, or you?
No, not yet. No,
Okay.
I just got back, so I need to take the test first.
Yeah.
So I'm prepping for the test.
Okay.
I need to take my Japanese language proficiency test.
Oh, okay.
In Japan, I didn't need it.
Right.
People, they trust me. They'd see me. They know me.
Right.
They're like, yeah, it's fine. They'd recommend me to some other friends at other companies. Like, yeah, he speaks Japanese. He's fine.
Right.
I get back here and I apply to jobs. They're like, yeah, well, you don't have that certification, so we don't believe you can speak Japanese.
Got it. Interesting. Okay, so you got to take that test.
Yeah.
You got to do the test for doing the MBA, and then you're going to start. And in the meantime, you're going to find some kind of work.
I'm looking for a business development job.
Okay.
I think those skills that I learned in finding clients, in that cold calling, and using different resources, it tie in perfectly to that.
Right.
Without having to deal with the human emotional aspect of my last job.
Right.
It's so much easier when you're dealing with company's money instead of somebody's livelihood.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So then basically you're doing sales, because in a sense you were doing sales before.
Yeah, exactly.
But now you can do it without having people get hysterical.
That was one thing. Either they would get hysterical or I just get so much stress trying to, control the process.
Yeah.
And like I said, the emotional aspect of it is what's unpredictable.
Right. So how are you liking being back in the U.S.?
Oh, I absolutely love it.
Okay.
I missed it 100%. Japan has some amazing things. Tokyo specifically. I don't know any other major city in the world where you can eat an amazing lunch for $10.
I know.
I know. You can walk around and you can pick any cultural cuisine for that price. It's amazing.
It is amazing. I know. And then to be able to eat there, and then you don't have to tip either. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's normal.
I know.
That the weekday post work drinking culture, it's nice because we don't really do that here.
Right.
Especially in LA where we don't have that much public transportation.
Right.
But that's something that I was getting afraid of because it's too much.
Yeah.
It's way too much over there.
Yeah, no, we were talking about this earlier. I said, that was one of the main reasons I decided it was time for me to leave
Yeah.
Japan, because I was just like, my liver is just, I'm going to die young if I keep doing this.
Yeah, that's the problem with being in a big city like, or in Tokyo or Osaka, is that there's not that much else to do.
Right.
You would just go eat and drink.
Right.
And then beers are only like $1.50. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Or you can go for like the Nomi Hodai, right? So they've got, some places have like all you can
Yeah.
drink. You got 2-hour window
Yeah,
where
yeah.
basically as much beer as you want to drink, they will give you.
which is it's one of the American mentalities that make me laugh so much, because it shifted already, but we see them and we're like, oh, that means I have to have 5. to get
Right,
my money's
exactly.
worth.
Right, exactly.
And I go with Japanese people and they're like, who cares?
Right, exactly.
Just having 3.
Right. The
No.
point is, as much as you want is there, so then you don't have to think about it instead of, I need to drink as much as I can. So, yeah. Yeah, Tokyo was a lot of fun. I loved living there. But again, it was very nice to come back to the States and be like, okay, I'm home. This is really, it's just nice being surrounded in the culture that you're just really, like, it, right?
I mean, the other thing is, even when you make your friends there, Japanese people are very closed off anyways. So to get like a real friendship where people open up about their problems,
Right.
or they want to listen to you,
Yeah.
your problems, that's really hard to find over there.
Yeah.
We're just so focused on their own thing.
Yeah.
And I remember one time when I was feeling down, I had my friends tell me like, oh, come on, we're here having fun. Don't ruin the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So it was, I don't know if you know the term KY, Kuki Yomenai.
Oh, huh. Yeah.
So it was
yeah.
like, don't ruin the
Don't
atmosphere.
you? Yeah. Yeah. It's that whole inside outside thing is really strong there as well. I found when I was in Kyushu, it was a little bit different. The southwest
Very warm.
is a little bit different culturally, but especially in the big cities, there's much more of a really sort of strong barriers stuff between people.
Yeah, so that's the tough part.
Yeah.
The other thing is a lot of stuff we don't notice. Most of their apartments, like for single person apartments, don't have more than one window.
Right.
And the absence of sunlight affects so
interesting.
much. It's something I never even thought about.
Right.
For everybody listening, that's something you should focus on when you move somewhere.
Yeah.
How much sunlight is coming into your apartment.
Yeah. That's interesting. When I lived in Megiddo, it was an old kind of building. And so we had one window, but it was a really big, huge sliding window. So that one was really nice. But yeah, the more modern apartments are different. That's quite interesting.
And there's if it's old, there's some rooms that wouldn't even get sunlight, right? You only have the light.
Yeah, yeah. But the one I had was really nice. We had it was a big sliding window that was as like the entire wall was a window.
Oh, okay.
So I was really lucky. Actually, all the apartments I had in Japan were pretty nice, but I had some friends who had other ones, and yeah, there were really small windows and not very many of them.
Yeah. It affects you slowly. It's
Yeah.
one of the things you don't realize.
Yeah. But I really enjoyed living there, but I am happy to be back in the U.S. after all this time.
Yeah, I think it's much more comfortable here because you can get a better support network quickly.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the good thing. But it's a really nice experience.
Yeah.
I think with any country, what I learned from it was you either have to commit to be there if you want to be successful there.
Right.
Commit to be there.
Yeah.
Or look at making your quick successes and know when to jump out.
Right. Or have a defined end point in mind. Yeah. That said, this summer we're going back for a trip to take my family, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Are you visiting only Tokyo or?
So we're gonna go to Tokyo and then Osaka, Kyoto. So my mother-in-law loves Japan, and so she bought tour tickets for my kids. So we're gonna tag along with them, and so it's Tokyo and Kyoto. Yeah. And then I think I might stay another week with my son to go hang out. Might take him down to Nagasaki to visit my friends that live there and stuff.
I mean, my favorite city is Fukuoka.
Yeah.
Absolutely love everything about that city.
Yeah. So you have experience. So you have experience in the Western Japan.
Oh yeah. I traveled around the whole country, it was good. But Fukuoka is my favorite.
Yeah.
If they had more business booming,
right,
I probably would have tried to stay there.
Okay. Yeah. Ramen's good there too.
Ramen's good. Yeah. It's a big city, yet it feels quiet and like serene. At the same time,
yeah. And again, Western Japan, the people are much more open there, and so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I have good friends there, and that was nice.
Being from LA, Osaka was great, honestly.
Yeah.
It just felt a lot more like people.
Right.
Like being here, you could speak to people.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to come in and talk
No,
about
thank
your
you.
experiences. It's been really, really fantastic.
Yeah, I hope it helps out anybody listening. If they're thinking of going to Japan, or with how I went through university and some of the things I wish I could have changed, I hope
Yeah.
it helps.
Yeah, I think so. It'll be great. I do have students who they know I'm half. Some of them know I'm half Japanese, or that I lived in Japan for a while. So I fairly frequently I'll have a student that's like, hey, I'm thinking about going to Japan, and they'll come talk to me. So it'll be cool that I can say, hey, you should listen to my interview with William. Awesome.
I'm a big advocate for the mentoring program.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, my mentor in my senior year connected me with someone who was at Amazon, and he had just moved to Japan because Amazon asked him to launch the Bachelor Japan. So he was the one in charge of that in Japan.
Oh, wow.
American. So while I was over there,
Yeah.
he was my unofficial mentor, and
Okay.
he was a client as well.
That's cool.
So he helped out a lot, and it's all thanks to that mentorship.
For the mentorship.
program.
So definitely get into the Student Center for Professional Development and try to get hooked up into the mentor program
it
for
helps
sure.
a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today at Beyond the Beach. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And if you're enjoying the show, please consider subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And for those of you who want to go the extra mile, leave a review or a comment. I would love to hear from you.